Abandoned ship, everybody. It's Oklahoma. Possibly one of the worst ships in World of Warships. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't that the point of abandoned ship, to show off the worst ships in the game? Yes. However, some ships actually perform okay. They're just terrible deals, or they cater to very niche playstyles. But Oklahoma has it all. Or rather, has none of it. Oklahoma is a premium Tier 5 American battleship, and although it bears some similarities, it does not belong to the same class as its peers, the Texas and the New York. It's actually a Nevada-class battleship. I already think the New York is a miserable ship to play, so if Oklahoma is worse, that's a really bad sign. Comparing them side by side, they have effectively the same amount of health, although Oklahoma's is technically 900 points lower. All of these ships have terrible speed, but Oklahoma has the honor of being the third slowest battleship in the entire game, behind Mikasa and South Carolina, both at 18 knots. Oklahoma does have a very respectable surface concealment of 11.8 kilometers at best, but extremely strangely, its air detectability is the second worst of any ship Tier 5 and below, a quarter kilometer behind Rio de Janeiro. So basically, it's a lighthouse the moment that CVs are involved, or spotter planes, fighter planes, etc., and it can't defend itself very well. It can't fight back either. It has a much lower DPM than its peers, the fourth lowest among Tier 5 battleships, in fact. You can immediately chalk this up to the insane 38-second reload, the second worst value in the game, behind Kansas, Minnesota, and Vermont, which each get 40 seconds. Its firing range is modest at best, but the real kicker is that it can pen barely above half the plating that Texas and New York can, once again among the very worst in tier and type. This is because its Krupp value is about 60% that of Texas and New York. Krupp is a coefficient that basically represents the hardness of the shells. Now, their alpha damage, when they actually penetrate, is excellent. All three of these ships have some of the hardest hitting shells at Tier 5, so I didn't write it down. But even here, Oklahoma's is marginally lower at up to 10,000 damage per shell, whereas Texas and New York get 10,300, to add insult to injury. The one area where Oklahoma truly shines is secondary battery, for some reason. It has the best secondary range and the second highest effective DPM of all Tier 5 battleships. The only problem is that the first best is Agincourt, whose secondary hitting DPM is 107,000, over 2.5 times as much. Agincourt is also faster, has 200 more health, and has a better main battery DPM than Texas, let alone Oklahoma. Oh yeah, and Agincourt is available for a little over $20, whereas Oklahoma is locked behind the Always Courageous collection. How do you complete the Always Courageous collection? Through containers, of course. Containers that cost $25 for 5 or 3,000 coal each. And you need to collect 16 items, where 4 duplicates can be traded for 1 you're missing. So basically, through direct purchase, Oklahoma costs anywhere between $100 and $325. Or you can get it for free with 48,000 coal at a minimum, which would make it the cheapest Tier 5 coal battleship, but in reality you're going to pull duplicates. It took me roughly 40 containers, so about 120,000 coal, which is enough to buy any of 3 out of 4 Tier 7 coal ships. I don't feel the need to go very in-depth about the build. I think that for the most part it's self-explanatory. I take the recommended upgrades or modifications, including the secondary battery mod. Also definitely recommend taking the secondary range signal, or just secondaries in general. But something I did want to draw attention to is how Wargaming does not actually recommend the 2 big-time secondary battery commander skills on Oklahoma. You'll notice that the little orange triangles that mark their recommendations are on other skills. I find that completely asinine, because this ship is already terrible. But it is that much worse when you don't play into the secondary battery, because that's what it has going for it, the one and only thing. I understand that, you know, being a slow-moving ship with poor air concealment, you're going to take a lot of fire. So I understand the want or the need to lean into survivability a little more, but you just get literally nothing for it. I mean, you prolong your suffering. That's about it. So if you don't take Concealment Expert, then you end up with 13.1 kilometers detection, which is fine. I mean, that's just pretty standard for a mid-tier battleship. And one other thing I was going to point out is that when you complete the Always Courageous collection, you not only get the ship, you also get this camouflage for it. So, yay. It looks good. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Definitely makes the whole collection worth at least $200, at least. As usual, I have 2 replays for you to demonstrate kind of the highs and the lows of this ship. Part of what I look forward to in this series is showing off what it looks like when a bad ship is able to pop off, or, you know, when it has the tools and the space it needs for success, or, you know, what it looks like when the success condition is met. And in this case, we have that commander that I just showed with the secondary battery skills and everything. Of course, it took all of 2 minutes just to get this far forward because it's such a slow-moving battleship. And therefore, I'm barely having a chance to engage with any of the destroyers in the cap circle before some other ship takes care of them. So in the meantime, I'm just trying to farm the Delhi with my main battery. So the nice thing is that even though the penetration on this ship is garbage compared to New York and Texas, it's still very good against light armor, such as what you'll find on cruisers at Tier 5. Pretty much any cruiser at Tier 5. There's even some Tier 4s in this match, come to realize. So you can shoot at cruisers that are bow in with pretty much no fear, and that's kind of nice. But when it comes to fighting battleships, you're going to get salvos like this one. Yikes. 2 torpedo protection hits, it is what it is, but also 2 shatters. 2 shatters against a relatively broadside Congo at, you know, 14, little under 14 kilometers away. That is pretty bad. I mean, what can I say? That is pretty bad. And I think we're going to get a similar shot here on the Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, so that one also pretty awkward. I mean, that time I did get 2 pens. That was nice. And for what it's worth, the pens that I am getting deal fairly significant damage by Tier 5 standards, but the 4 shatters onto a relatively broadside Tier 5 battleship. That is insane. He was angled ever so slightly. The Battle Expert mod I have under the crosshair is probably a little bit misleading here. I mean, it's gonna say it's green because it's not a very harsh angle, but maybe it's too harsh for this ship. And that's something to keep in mind. The Congo there, that was even flatter, and that time that was a little more fruitful. 2 pens, but then it was 2 overpens, you know? This ship has no real middle ground to speak of. When it does, when you do get those pens, it does a lot of damage. But you either shatter or ricochet at the weirdest angles, or you'll overpen through the bow or the stern, or, you know, maybe you'll just tickle the superstructure a little bit, because it's not, we're not talking super accurate shots either. Or you get salvos like that one, 5 overpens. What in the world? This is the Oklahoma experience, everybody. Well, it is now 5 minutes into the match, and I have, for the first real opportunity, gotten into secondary battery range for a target, in this case the Rio de Janeiro. And I'm also going to get to bully the Hawkins a little bit, who has come over to capture A. That is a bot, of course, so he doesn't know any better. This match was a little more than half human players, but definitely a bot there. Now, this is kind of a best-case scenario for Oklahoma. It's built for secondaries, and I have a target on both sides, so I'm getting to engage both sides' secondary guns, and also I still have my main battery at a pretty close range here that I get to use as needed. I decide, my secondaries are going to clean up Hawkins, and that's literally a bot, so I'm not feeling too threatened by him, so I don't even worry about shooting him. I save my main battery for the Congo, and continue to get rather disappointing shots, but I will admit the secondaries are doing their job here. That's very nice. And we're up to 78,000 damage and counting. We're setting fires. It's actually doing what it's supposed to do. This is, I assume, what Oklahoma was destined to do by wargaming. And there's a really good example of what a salvo should look like out of this ship. 4 full pens and 2 over pens. Unfortunately, no Citadel hit or anything very spicy, but I mean, at least it was all pens that time, and that did a really decent amount of damage. I wasn't keeping very good track, but maybe about 20,000 damage, which at tier 5 is crushing. I mean, that's like 2/5 of the Congo's entire health pool. The only unfortunate thing now is, by trying to take advantage of my secondaries on both sides, now I'm kind of broadside on one side or another. I mean, here I'm trying to turn out, but it's very awkward. The Oktyabrskaya Revoluция there is, he's going to get a good shot on me. There's just nothing I can do about that. I was desperately trying to kill the Congo here. 219 health. Can I at least get away with that? Well, I don't know if you caught it, but he actually just started healing. Not that it mattered, because only one shell hit, and it was a ricochet. Yeah. Another fire, though. Another fire. So that's going to keep burning. I don't remember exactly. That ends up being a little under 130,000 damage, I believe. So, again, for a tier 5 ship, that's actually a really good performance. But did you notice how it still felt like a pain in the ass? I mean, that was probably the literal best-case scenario for the Oklahoma. And it still left me trapped in an extremely awkward position between big enemies on all sides. I wouldn't have been able to cap the A capture point. They would have attacked me relentlessly, because that surface concealment just is not good enough. And it wasn't enough. At the end of the day, we don't win that anyway. I really can't provide any utility to the team. I can't save anyone else from rushing in and dying. Can't angle properly because they're everywhere. And by a pretty decent margin, I was the biggest performer on my team in that match. So I did everything that my ship was capable of, and we didn't even come anywhere close. I did about 22,000 damage to the Rio de Janeiro just with fires, and about as much damage with the raw output of secondary battery shells. So, I did about as much damage to that ship with secondaries as I did to Congo with the main battery. So you can think of this ship as literally just carving out main battery DPM and giving it to your secondary battery. The only problem with that is that this is tier 5. I'm not saying that you can't have a secondary battery ship at tier 5. Agincourt exists. It's just that Agincourt is like 2.5 times better than this ship at secondaries. So, you know... Alright, I've got another one for you. This match is tiers 5 and 6, so there are no bots in this one. This is all human players, and we're being up-tiered a little bit. There could be tier 7s, but there's not, so it's not that bad. But how do we do against, you know, tier 5 and 6 in this thing? I would expect to have an exceedingly hard time. I mean, last battle... against my own tier and a tier lower, it was pretty difficult to keep up. This can't be any easier. That being said, you know, a different match is a different match. Anything could happen. Well, what does happen to begin with is, again, I am almost 3 minutes into this match. I skipped ahead, obviously, to spare you all the waiting for this ship to get into position at 19.7 knots. It is really, really bad. Now, we managed to hit 2 pens and an overpen into the Dallas there. So that's the upside that you get with this ship and similar ships. It's nothing unique to Oklahoma. In fact, if anything, it's in spite of Oklahoma. But you can bully lightly armored targets from pretty much any angle. That being said, I mean, this ship is not very tolerant of very sharp angles, even in lightly armored targets. The overmatch is, I believe on paper, it's the same as Texas and New York, but at tier 5, everything is just a little weird. You can never really be too sure what you're going to get with these salvos, especially as inaccurate as they are. Yeah, see, there we go. 3 overpens from pretty much straight through the deck. Who knows? At least it will do some damage. And it's nice that we're also getting some damage in on the destroyers in this cap circle with our secondary battery, which is barely able to vault over the island there. That's very good. So this is, again, probably one of the best situations you could ask for out of this ship. You know, I at least have a target to fire at, that Dallas in the distance. Even though I don't have very high hopes or expectations, I can be doing one thing, my secondaries can be doing another. And sometimes you get plays like that. So finally, the main battery came in for us and did 2 citadels to that poor Dallas, who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and at the wrong angle. I have to admit, I got a kick out of that. 2 kills right off the bat in Oklahoma made me a pretty happy camper for a moment. But now we have nothing else to do except fight this New Mexico. Now, I would love to challenge the cap circle and the Mutsuki in it, but I move so incredibly slowly that I figure I'm better off focusing my main battery shells, however effective they may or may not be, at the enemy battleship there. I mean, obviously it's not going to live for long, it versus like 5 of us on this flank, but I'll do my part. I shan't prolong the inevitable. And that's a pretty steep angle, especially by the time of impact. So, of course, you know, 6 overpens through the superstructure and 1 ricochet it is. But we take care of him pretty easily. And take a look at the clock at the top right. We have 13 minutes on the clock. I miss a good chance to shoot the Mutsuki there, and also the Delhi to the right. So, with nothing else to do, I just need to return to A and cap it. Okay, so it took like a full 2 minutes to traverse that tiny distance to get to the A cap. you you cannot have fun in this ship. It is brief flashes of hope, only to be let down by poor dispersion and wonky ballistics. And then you get shells like that one, which further shroud this ship in just complete nonsense. Able to citadel a Fuso pretty much through the cheek. Now, of course, the Yamato line of ships has that famous cheek and everything, and I assume Fuso kind of has it as well. I actually don't know that for sure. I'm assuming. That would make sense. But the performance on this ship is nothing you can track. Absolutely nothing. Well, it's down to just me and the Nuremberg, and we have really nothing that we can do here. I mean, you already know, as slow as this thing travels, I'm never going to get to B, let alone C. So I figure, well, I mean, all the targets are battleships plus the Geda. So let's just ball out. Let's just fight. Go down swinging. And maybe we'll take some more ships with us. That was my hope. Yeah. So this is when I was really hoping that my secondaries would kick it up a notch, but at this point it's too late. It already doesn't matter. I am less than 4 kilometers away from another very large battleship, and I'm basically showing my broadside to it, so gotta love that single overpen also. Aiming ever so slightly below the waterline. So many of those shells went into the water. They went down from my aim, so yeah, that's it. That is Oklahoma. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this video. I made a point to do something this week that was not a smoke cruiser, since that was the last 2 episodes, but please leave a comment below. What are some of your worst least favorite ships in this game? What are some of the worst according to you? If they get enough traction, I would be happy to make a video about them in the future. Otherwise, I've got my own list that I'm working through, and I hope you'll tune in next Saturday. Thank you so much. Have a good one.